Hi, so I'm Phil from Dirty Drive Away. You've finally seen me. Just hoping that I've got my best angle. So I'm doing this video today in response to a few comments, questions, emails I've recently received about people who are wanting to expand their existing companies or start up a jet washing, driveway, patio cleaning company. And I've had a few emails regarding pressure washers, the difference in the components, and basically what's the best one to go for. So I thought in this video I would run through some of the basic components that you'll get on a washer, the differences, the pros and cons between flow and pressure, and what obviously the figures mean that you will see in the specification for a lot of these jet washers. So first thing we'd like to start off with, a bit of an itchy head. First thing we'll start off with is the difference in the figures that you're going to see. So you're going to see pressure, you're going to see flow. A lot of the time the two are kind of linked together. Normally the more pressure you've got, the greater flow you'll have. But obviously the pressure is normally, the flow and the pressure is going to be limited by the pump as to what its output can be. So basically you'll see in some of my previous videos, I did do a video on business, startup and equipment. It briefly showed some of the stuff and some of the gear that I carry on my van. Like I say, not all of it is essential, it's just stuff that I've accumulated over the years. And there was also another video that I did showing my actual washer, my Zeta washer that I use. It's made by Dual Pumps in the UK. It's basically an 18 horsepower Briggs & Stratton engine connected to a rather large interpump pump that can put out 250 bar and 23 litres a minute. It's a very big washer. It's on the top end of what you're gonna need for cleaning driveways and patios. Anything more than that is wasteful. I don't use all the power, all the potential of my washer, but I know that if I did need it, the power is there. It's the flow that you've got to consider. The more flow you have, the quicker and easier it's going to be to get through your cleaning tasks. So what is flow? Well, your flow is basically the litres per minute. It's the amount of water that your washer can put out in a minute, basically. You can have all of the pressure you like, but if you've got no flow, the two are kind of linked. You can have 250 bar of pressure, but if you've only got 15 litres per minute, that's all of the water that's going to be able to come out. It will come out at high pressure, but that's not really what the cleaning's about. You know, in order to clean efficiently and quickly, you need to get the water out of the lance, and that's where your flow comes in. So the higher the flow, the quicker and more powerful your machine is going to be. So don't be confused by high pressure output. You know, you can have lots and lots of pressure, but if you haven't got the flow, it's going to be pretty much worthless. So yeah, when it comes to cleaning driveways and patios, and that, it's all about the flow. So look for a decent amount of flow. So what is a decent amount of flow? Well, obviously, if you're looking at adding a jet wash to your inventory, then obviously you should be doing a little bit of research as to the equipment and the accessories and things that you may need. But basically, it's all going to be down to the pump, and you'll see if you've been on looking at perhaps DIY. From now on, when I class a DIY washer, I'm going to be referring to washers that you can buy quite easily from DIY stores or from online. I'm talking about Karcher's, your Neil Fisk's, your Bosch, any other company out there that makes portable washers, DIY washers. I'm talking about your general sort of home use washer, whether you clean your car, whether you've got your own patio. You will see I'm talking about those kind of washers. So your common household washer connects up to your garden tap. You'll see in the specification for a lot of these washers that you might get 150, 160 bar, and then it will say your flow. The flow for most of these is going to be topped off at around 9 litres a minute. And now the reasoning behind this is because they connect up to a garden tap. Now I'll run through in a minute the differences between positive and negative feed, but basically they connect to a garden tap. Now your limitation there is going to be the flow that your utility is supplying. So here in Bromley, our local authority is Thames Water, and a lot of time if you go onto their websites, it will tell you what they try and guarantee to be the minimum flow. And you'll probably find they normally say the minimum flow they guarantee is 9 litres a minute, and that'll go on about a certain head or a certain height. That's basically what head is. So they guarantee 9 litres a minute. You'll find it'll probably fluctuate anywhere between 9 and perhaps 17 litres a minute. But without a flow gauge, you won't actually know exactly what it's putting out. And obviously that flow is likely to change. Oh, that itch is back again. That flow is likely to change with the season, the temperature. I always tend to find that the flow rate and the pressure from a garden hose drops off quite dramatically during the summer. And I've obviously put this down, especially at weekends, I've put this down to the fact that people are at home, the weather is warmer, people are out washing their cars, they're filling up paddling pools for the kids, doing washing, etc. So the flow does generally reduce off quite a bit during the summer season. So yeah, so that they're normally topped off at 9 litres a minute. So obviously if these home washers, should we say, were fitted or equipped with larger pumps that could say put out 15 litres a minute, there's no guarantee the washer's actually going to work at home, because if you haven't got 15 litres a minute going into it, then obviously the pump's not going to work. So if you've got a 15 litre a minute pump but you're only putting 9 litres a minute in, the pump is going to stutter, it's not going to work. So basically it's going to be pretty much useless. Hence the reason why a lot of these store-bought washers, they may claim high pressures, but the flow is always going to be roughly the same, because they're not going to exceed what the local authorities guarantee they can put out. Otherwise their products just won't work. So they'll always be capped around about 9, may even be below 9, but they'll be around 9 litres a minute. So that's what you would call a positive feed. So we'll get on to now positive, negative. So positive feed, what's a positive feed? Basically a positive feed is a washer that you connect directly to a garden tap or a hose. So you'd have your hose from your external tap, and that will be connected from a hose pipe directly into your washer. So on the end of your washer, you'll have your connector. That'll be your common, classed as a hose lock washer, but it'll be a common quick disconnect connector. So you have a connector on the end, and then your hose would lock onto it, and then you just disconnect it when you're finished. So that's your positive feed. A negative feed is basically where your jet wash will take your water from an external source. So you'll have to have a water tank or a water butt, or somewhere where you can hold some kind of large capacity of water. So you'd have a hose that would be connected from your washer directly into that external water source. This way you'd never have any issues with your flow, because the pressure washer will be taking the water directly from the tank. So you don't have to worry about what kind of pressure is going in, it will just draw it straight from the tank. The downside to the negative feed is that obviously you've got to have either a large enough tank or the means to put the water back into the tank to keep the tank topped up. Now in my van I have a 400 litre water tank, and that's connected, I normally try and connect up 2 garden hoses to a ball valve that's connected in the top to try and keep the water topped up. So now obviously if I'm cleaning on a normal situation, I'll be running between quarter and half a throttle. It's normally perfectly fine, the flow is normally fine. On a good day I should find that the supply from the garden hose going into the tank should be enough to keep the tank pretty much topped up. As soon as you start ramping up the power and you're ticking on towards kicking out your sort of 20 to 23 litres a minute, I tend to find that the supply from the hose is not enough to keep the tank topped up. Well, obviously, if the water company is only guaranteeing between 9 and 15 litres a minute and you're using 23, just simple maths is going to say that the water tank is going to run out quicker than what you can keep putting the water in. So, as long as you're a bit conservative on the power, you should find that with a reasonable size external tank, you should have some decent run time. I tend to find that if I'm cleaning and I'm running quarter to half throttle, even if the pressure is relatively poor for the feed, I should find that I'll get around about an hour out of cleaning before I may find the water tank's empty. touch wood so far this year, because my water tank I've only fitted early this season. I've never had an issue with the tank running out. Obviously 400 litres should give you quite a lot of run time. With the water tank being constantly topped up, I'm finding at the moment the tank is not emptying, so I can get a whole job done in one go without having to worry about running out of water. As the season progresses and it gets more into the summer and the water flow drops off, I may then obviously find that the tank will empty, but I should get a majority of the job done before that happens. So going back to the washers, we've discussed obviously your pressure and your flow. Always look for good quality components. Now you're going to find there's many different washers out there. There's companies that make the washers. At the end of the day, they're all going to be an engine, a gearbox and a pump, other miscellaneous components, be it the unloader valves, safety release valves, all that kind of stuff. But the brunt of your work and the brunt of your power is going to come from your pump. If you're using an inferior pump, it's not going to last particularly long. Remember, there's moving parts in there, there's seals, there's pistons, plungers, etc. They're put under a lot of strain. If you've got high pressure and you've got high flow, if you're talking 250 bar, that is quite immense pressure. That's over 3,500 psi. So obviously your pump is going to be put under some extreme strain. So you're going to want to be looking for good quality components. So the leading manufacturer in a lot of these pumps is a company called Interpump. It's an Italian company. They make the pumps, they make the gearboxes, they make a lot of the ancillary parts, your unloader valves, your safety relief valves, that kind of stuff, which I'll talk a little bit more later on. Very, very good company. And obviously, whatever engine you've got, you want to match a decent sized pump to it. The gearbox that sits in between, again, you'll find that the engines that come with the washers, they normally spin at a higher revolution than what the pump needs to operate at. So if your standard washer, it might run at about 3,500 RPM, something like that, in that region. Obviously that's way too much for the pump. The pump just needs to tick over a constant speed, which I think is around 1,450 RPM. So in order to make up for the difference, you have what you call a reduction gearbox, which sits in between the pump and the engine. So obviously for every revolution of the engine, it reduces it down, so that the pump in turn works a lot less. There's not as many revolutions. So that's what your gearbox would do. And like I said before, on top of that, you've got your other components like your unloader valve. Now you need to make sure really that if you've got a washer, you need to have an unloader valve. Now an unloader valve basically takes the pressure that's within the pump and the trigger, and basically sends the water off either into a bypass or it'll send it off back to the tank. In my case, I've got a return to tank bypass. So basically the water that's being fed into the machine and through the pump, when you let off the trigger, the water that's contained within the pressure is basically fed back into the tank, so that it basically it feeds in one big continuous loop and it's fed back into the water tank. A bypass system is basically where the unloader valve will kick in, it'll shut off, and it'll basically send the water back into the pump like on a return feed. They both work under the same principle. The only downside to the bypass system is that because the water is going to be in a continuous loop within the pump, if the pump's operating, you can't normally run on idle for more than a couple of minutes, because the pump will heat the water up, which in turn causes the pump to overheat. So if you do only have a bypass system, if you are going to not be using the machine for more than a couple of minutes, obviously you'd have to switch it off. Whereas a return to tank bypass, you're always getting a fresh feed of cold water going through, so it's keeping the pump cold. So there's no issues. You can let it idle for a lot longer. So people ask me about price. How much would they need to spend? Well, obviously, you can spend as little or as much as you like. Obviously, the more you spend, the better quality you're going to get, the more pressure and the more flow you're going to get. Ideally, for cleaning driveways and patios, you're going to need something that's pretty professional. Your common store-bought washer is not really going to be up to the task of cleaning driveways and patios, not on a professional basis. They're not designed for the continuous use. You've got to imagine if you're doing like a block paved driveway, if it's something reasonably large, you're going to be out there cleaning for 3, possibly 4 hours straight. Now, obviously, a store-bought washer, it's predominantly designed for cleaning your car, cleaning your patio at home. Something that may only take you a half hour, 45 minutes, or an hour, something like that. If you're putting these machines under continuous pressure, where you're using them for 3, 4, 5 hours at a time, your store-bought washer is not going to last particularly long. It's just not. It's not designed for that. So you're going to want something that's a little bit more manly, a little bit more up to the task. So price-wise, the price is going to reflect what kind of pump you're going to get. I mean, engines, they all seem to be predominantly, they're all going to be, they should all be decent engines. I mean, you're going to be looking at one of the purchase one that's got either a Honda or a Briggs & Stratton engine, but the engine is not really what's doing the work. The engine is only going to be turning the pump. It's your pump that's going to be the ultimate piece of equipment, basically. If your pump is inferior, then it's not going to last. So price-wise, obviously, the bigger the pump, the more money the jet wash is going to cost. So people have said to me, I can get 15 litres per minute. 15 litres per minute is fine. Ideally, if you can afford to have one that's bigger and you can put out some more litres, that will be more beneficial to you. You'll be getting the work done quicker. The more flow you've got, the quicker it's going to cut through the dirt, and you're going to be off the job and home a lot quicker. But at the end of the day, set yourself a budget. Ideally, for something professional or semi-professional, it's got to be petrol or diesel driven. Obviously, with a lot of the emission stuff these days, it's normally going to be petrol. Electric ones are fine, but again, you're going to be hooking up to the customer's electric supply. In turn, it means the customer, one, has got to be home or have an external power source. And obviously then you're going to be using their electric, whereas obviously petrol, the customer doesn't always have to be home. As long as you've got access to a tap, it's perfectly fine. It gives you a bit more flexibility. So back to the price. Ideally, you're probably going to be looking at spending around £1,500 minimum on a semi-professional pressure washer that's got an output of around sort of 15 litres a minute. I couldn't tell you exactly what engines they use. They all come with different engines, but like I say, if it's got a Honda engine or a Briggs & Stratton engine, you're pretty much good to go. They're all very good engines, but obviously your price range is going to be governing pretty much what pump's going to be supplied with it. For example, if you take my washer, I've got a big old washer. It's a van-based washer. It's too heavy to keep taking in and out of the van. I'd need ramps and everything to get the washer in and out. That's got 23 litres a minute. Now, if you was to look at replacing the pump on that washer alone, you'll be looking at spending £800 just on the pump. That's without all the other bits and pieces that go with it. So the pump is a vital part of the machine. So always check the specification of the machine and that it is a decent pump. If it's got an interpump on it, you're normally pretty good to go. Just keep an eye on your flow. So ideally, let's say you're looking at £1,500 upwards. People have also asked me about patio cleaners, the rotary cleaners, the whirlaways, or whatever other manufacturers of rotary cleaners are. Like I've said in my other videos, I do have one. It sits on the inside and the roof of the van. It's not my go-to tool of choice. I do tend to find you have to ramp the power up a lot more. I have just put on another video on showing me using it on a concrete driveway. For concrete, they're great, but you'll tend to find that they're just not really man enough for block paving, especially if you've got lots of weeds, we've got lots of moss. Even more so if you do happen to have a lower pressure machine. If you've got a machine that's only kicking out 15 litres a minute, you're going to really struggle trying to get the weeds and the dirt and the muck out of a block paved driveway with a rotary cleaner. So what I'd say to you, if you are looking at investing in a washer, either to add to your existing inventory if you're doing window cleaning, gardening, guttering, that kind of stuff, or if you want to set up a business doing this professionally, if you were looking at say a jet wash and a rotary cleaner package, you're probably better off skipping the rotary cleaner, because I very rarely use mine, and you'll get a better clean with the lance because you can see exactly what you've cleaned and whether or not you have to go over it again. You'll find with the rotary cleaner it can be a little bit streaky if you're not careful. So I'd say, well, look, if you're looking at buying a rotary patio cleaner, they can come in at around £400 to £500, depending upon what size you've got. So take your £500 that you would spend on a rotary cleaner and add it to the cost of your washer. You know, if you set a budget of £1,500 for your washer and £500 for a cleaner, we'll put the £500 towards it and spend £2,000 on a washer, because you will thank me for it later. You know, if you can spend an extra £500 on your washer, it will mean a bigger pump, which in turn means you'll get the job done quicker, and it's less strain on you as well. You know, if you're doing this job, when you've been doing it for a long time, I've been doing it for quite a few years now, it's not just the strain on your equipment, it's the strain on you, you know, and your body itself. You know, a lot of people think, oh, you know, cleaning driveways is easy. You know, it can be therapeutic, yes, but it's dirty, it's mucky, it's very strenuous on you and your body. The main thing I tend to suffer with, especially during the summer periods and this time of year, is you get a bit of repetitive strain. You get it in your hands. These things, you know, my joints get a bit stiff because you're always on and off the trigger. You know, you'll have seen, if you see my other videos, you'll see my video on triggers, and I went through one on LTF, which is the low trigger force, which means you've got less force to keep holding a trigger. You've got to imagine, if you're working at high pressures with these triggers and these lances, you're holding the trigger in, but you've got the pressure that's within the system, within the gun, that's trying to pull the trigger out. So your hands are constantly holding the trigger in, and obviously you're switching from left to right. So your hands, they do get the brunt of it. So obviously, if you're cleaning, you've got a big area you've got to clean. Rather than spending, you know, 6 or 7 hours cleaning it, if you can put the money towards a better pump that's got a higher output and a higher flow, you may find that you could rip through that driveway and save yourself a couple of hours. In which case, you know, you're home quicker. You know, you're not constantly on and off that trigger, because you will find after 3 or 4 hours cleaning, your body's had enough. It's not just your hands, it's your back as well. You know, you're hunched over, you're holding this lance in the air, you're holding it down. You know, the pressure from the lance is wanting to kick back all the time. You're fighting it. You know, at high pressures, you remember that there's a kickback on the lance, so you're holding onto the lance, and it's trying to push your arm back. So it hurts your shoulders, it hurts your back. You know, invest in a decent lumbar belt. You know, a bit like a weightlifting belt. You may think it's silly, but you put that on, it keeps your posture better. And it's these little things. At the end of the day, you know, you don't want injuries down the line, because obviously if you're off with a bad back, you're not earning money. So little things like that, you know, just, you know, if you can invest in a better washer, you will thank me for it later. Your body will thank you, because you will. I mean, I suffer at the moment. I get sore joints, get a bit of pins and needles in my hands. It's only purely because where you're switching from left to right, and you're on and off the trigger all the time, and you're cleaning for 3 or 4 hours at a time. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it when it comes to washers. I mean, you don't need to. I do have a big washer on my van. You know, it doesn't come off the van. If you're looking at washers and their size, you know, look at things, the practicality. Look at your vehicle. Is your vehicle big enough? Do you want it to be more portable? I actually have a portable washer. I actually use a K7 Karcher, which I have as a portable washer. Now I use that predominantly if I've got a customer's house and there's access issues, so there's no side gate or there's no access to, say, the rear of the property. I don't like pulling the hose through people's houses because it's big, it's dirty, you know, it leaves black rubber marks all over the place. So I have a K7 Karcher, which again, they're like £500 by themselves, which I use as my portable. But again, I wouldn't want to do a massive area with it. It's okay for doing a bit of deck work or a small patio, but I certainly wouldn't try and attempt to do a block paving or a large block paved driveway with a Karcher, because I know my back won't like it, and my body would not be thanking me. So yeah, at the end of the day, you can only basically buy, you know, what you can afford. You don't need all the gear, like I said, that's in my. When it comes to itchy nose, you don't need all that gear that you saw in my previous video, you know, but you will start to accumulate stuff over the years, you know, be it turbo nozzles, extra lances, triggers, things like that. It comes that itchy head again. Oof. So yeah, if your washer that you're looking at buying is maybe not quite so portable as you want it to be, you know, because at the end of the day they're all going to be weighty, no matter how big it is, they're all going to have quite a substantial weight. You'll see in my other video that I've got quite a large hose reel on the front of the washer. Because my washer is van based, it doesn't come out. I've got 40 metres of high pressure hose on that, plus an additional 10 on the side. Now, a lot of the washers you buy will only come with around 10 meters of high pressure hose. Now, obviously, it sounds like a lot, but it's not. So the hose you're not actually going to be working that far away from the actual machine, which again has its pros and cons. But you've got to remember, a lot of time, if you're cleaning block paving or anything like that, it is dirty, mucky, gritty work. And you want to try and keep your washer as clean as possible, especially some of the components in there that there might be some moving components in there. To having grit and sand and dirt and muck flying around and it going all over your washer, you want to try and avoid that, because it is, at the end of the day, it's an engine. I know it is designed for a pressure washer, but you can't spray the intake with water, because obviously it would damage the engine. So the further away from the washer you can be with an extension on the hose, the cleaner it's going to keep your washer, and obviously in turn it's going to mean less maintenance. It can be parched. Let's fill the minion. So yeah, that's basically my input on the washers. I don't claim to know everything about the washers. There are obviously companies out there. I did a lot of research when I bought mine. I knew that I wanted a washer that was going to stay in the van. I didn't have to keep lugging it in and out. So yeah, do a bit of research. There are many companies out there. Just look for good quality components. Anything that sounds too cheap, just check it out. There's always going to be reviews on different companies that make things. There's always going to be companies out there that try and do things that are different, to try and improve something. At the end of the day, if the original company that manufactures something, like Interpump, if they want to tweak their pumps, they will. But obviously there's going to be other companies out there that are going to try and do modifications to them. Well, obviously, if the modifications were great and they're supposed to be done like that, then the original manufacturer would think, okay, yeah, that's a good idea, perhaps we'll try that. So don't be fooled into thinking that just because one company that makes them does the design this way, or has altered it, so you lose the gearbox, or they suggest one thing's better than something else. Just do a bit of research on it. Google will always come up trumps with people that have left reviews or have done, again, YouTube videos perhaps on different washers that they've tried or they've used. Like I say, I don't claim to know different types of washer, the manufacturers of them. All I know is if it's got a decent engine, either a Honda or a Briggs & Stratton engine, coupled with good quality components, Interpump pumps and other components, you're going to be pretty much spot on. Just check your flow, check your pressure, and make sure that it is going to be up to the task that you want it to do. And I've said to people in the past, look, for professional use, the store-bought washer is not going to do much for you, and it's not really going to portray a professional image. If you turn up to a customer's house and you pull out a K7 Karcher and say, I'm going to clean your block paved driveway with this, they're going to raise their eyebrows and say, well, why am I paying you X amount of pounds to clean my driveway if you're using the same equipment that I can go and pick up from my local DIY store? So bear that in mind. A professional washer is for a professional image, and not only that, you want to get the job done quick, and you want to make sure that the job is done really well. You don't want a customer calling up saying, oh, well, it's not been done properly, or I've got bits missing. Especially if you've been around someone's house and you've managed to blow away half their mortar joints because you've not quite worked out how your machine works. Every machine, you have to assess the situation as to what you're doing, look at your environment, and look at what it is you're actually cleaning. And bear in mind that you've got things like mortar joints, you've got sand and cement joints in there. If you go at it too hard with a pressure washer, you're going to blow them out. So always assess it first. Look at them, think, well, okay, well, you've got a bit of damage there already. Make sure the customer knows that any areas that may need attention when you're finished. That if you've got weeds and moss growing in mortar joints, the chances are that the mortar is not in a particularly sound condition. So make sure you advise the customer that before you commit to a quote or commit to a clean. There's nothing worse than turning up to a customer's house and start cleaning their patio, and you blow away 3/4 of their mortar joints, and they turn around and say, wait, what's happened? At the end of the day, the washer should not remove the mortar joints by itself. It's only because there's been an underlying problem there and they're weak in the first place. So make sure you assess the situation, adjust the washer accordingly to your environment. Well, I hope you found this video informative. I'd like to thank all my viewers and my subscribers for leaving me nice comments and obviously questions. A lot of you have found a lot of my videos helpful, especially if you're starting up a company. My lichen and black stain videos seem to have gone down a storm. They seem to have helped many people cure this patio disease that is lichen. So yeah, I'll continue to make these videos if they receive the popularity that they have. If you have any jet washing videos that perhaps you would like to see, and if I can make them, I will certainly try. There should be another video coming up soon that I've been requested on decking and various other bits and pieces. I try to cover most bases for you so that you can, you can get the best from me, should I say. But thanks for watching. Any comments, any questions, please feel free to leave them below. I will try and answer. Like I say, I don't supply washers, I don't supply parts, I don't do any of that. I only go by experience from bits and pieces that I've used in the past. And I can honestly say, hand on my heart, when it comes to this, you do get what you pay for. And there are a lot of inferior quality parts out there. The last thing you want when you're on a job is for something to go wrong. 9 cases out of 10, it's normally something very simple. It's something like an O-ring, something like that blows. There's a lot of O-rings, especially on your unloader valves and in your connections. If you lose an O-ring, it could put you off the job for the day. So yeah, just bear in mind that good quality components will put you in good standing. So that's it from me. If you are starting up a company or you're adding it to your existing company, good luck with the cleaning. Any comments, questions, leave them below. That's all for me. Bye for now.